Hello, this is Jessica. I'm going to be presenting chapter 7. Let me share my screen. Okay. I'm sorry, my computer is being slow. There you go. Okay, so I'll be presenting chapter 7, Assessment of Learning, The Bridge to Administrator Equity. It's by the book Assessing English Language Learners, Bridges to Educational Equity by Margot Kallio, presented by Jessica. Okay. So the points that I'm going to be talking about is the interim measures and high stakes tests, the advantages and disadvantages of standardized achievement tests, the English language proficiency tests, the sample of annual English language testing, and the recommendations for planning and implementing well-rounded accountability systems. So interim measures is a form of assessment and measure assessment of learning. Interim measures are a form of assessment where educators gather data to determine where students are in their learning and to what extent students are on track to performing well on end of course or annual tests. The premise behind interim measures is that these tests can inform and improve practice, thereby contributing to increased student achievement. Interim measures are not part of the instructional cycle and are not designed by teachers who work together as a team. Interim measures are commercial products sold by testing companies or publishers and purchased by districts or schools. Interim measures are administered at regular intervals, such as at beginning, midpoint, and toward the end of a school year. And then we'll also talk about the high stakes test. So this is another form of assessment that measures assessment of learning. The high stakes test, its primary purpose of gauging student achievement on an annual basis and its contribution to the accountability of districts and tests. This one's the one that epitomizes assessment of learning. Many challenges remain with the use of standardized achievement measures in English for ELS. This include only tacit acknowledgement of the role of language in achievement, the propagation of an English-only orientation rather than a recognition of the research that has solidified lingualism and biliteracy as assets, and the continued use of ineffective accommodations on state and consortium tests. High stakes are questionable in validity. And remember, without validity, there's no equity. And the debate still continues over its appropriateness. Some of the primary inadequacies of high stakes tests of academic achievement for ELS that lead us to questions their validity are the following. Universal design that has naturally guided the test development. The language development process is not considered in item construction. Language complexity and density confound students' ability to express conceptual understanding. Access to meaning or understanding is dependent on text. Bias in content review panels have not focused on linguistic or cultural influences of the items. Cognitive labs, pilot testing, and field testing phases of test development do not include ample representation of ELLS or ELLS with disabilities across various language proficiency levels. Modifications or accommodations for ELLS and students with disabilities have not been piloted, field tested, or empirically examined. ELLS being instructed in their home language do not have comparable standards reference tests to demonstrate their language proficiency or achievement. So that's why the debate still continues over its appropriateness. In the validity, it's there's questionable validity there, and remember, without validity, there's no equity. And then these are some of the advantages of and disadvantages of using standardized achievement tests. So what Margot was saying is that there's a lack of sufficient accommodations result in lower which results in lower performance by ELLs because they're just not appropriate for them. Also, the con or disadvantages of the standardized achievement tests could be that linguistically inappropriate for ELLs and ELS with disabilities because due to the complex linguistic structures that may invade ELLs understanding of context. And then the following also, all right? So these are some of the advantages for the standardized achievement test. It produces consistently reliable data, requires uniform data collection and analysis on large numbers of students, provide a state or national perspective, are not confounded by individual teacher effects, are readily scored, easy to train teachers and procedures for administration. And the disadvantages are often serve as a gatekeeper for students and teachers. They do not represent in-depth conceptual knowledge and do not allow for individual student creativity or imagination. Development may not be inclusive of all students, especially the ELLs and ELLs with disabilities. They generally adhere to time limits, can lead to misinterpretation of data and overgeneralization of results. But over the time, we've seen, for example, WIDA and the ELPA, which stands for English Language Proficiency Assessment for the 21st Century, step up and advocate for ELLs students. And so because of them, we have the English Language Proficiency Test, which is require responses to a federal mandate and a major contributor to state accountability and are substantive value for ELLs. ELLs, composite language proficiency level, and all the configurations of combined language domains assist in the placement of that ELL. Additionally, using the same metric or common measure from year to year allows districts and states to measure ELLs annual progress and attainment of English language proficiency, which is used for reclassification purposes. It also helps inform students' academic achievement. And therefore, we have some of the accommodations and accessibility, but not for everybody, right? So the accessibility, this is a sample. These are designed for all ELLs. Accessibility in beta designated tools, including highlighters, line guides, magnifiers, color overlays, answer masking, color contrast, magnifying glass, spell check. And then we have test administration procedures, including using familiar school personnel to administer the assessment, administering the assessment individually or in a small group or in a separate room, providing frequent supervised breaks or allowing students to take an assessment in short segments. And then the accommodations for ELLs with disabilities with IEPs or 504 plans only. They have responses scribed by test administrator while the student dictates responses orally or points to the responses. Responses from students using assistive technology. Responses by students using Braille writers or Braille note takers, using recording devices or using external augmentative and alternative communication device or software. And then they can also have large print text booklets. However, I don't know, in the conversation in the chapter 7 discussion thread, you can share your opinion about this, about what do you think all these accommodations, accessibility have changed with the new generation? Did you feel that it does make a difference? Is it more, there's more valid? Is there more validity in this? Or do you still feel that we have long ways to go when thinking about ELLs and ELLs with disabilities? So some of the recommendations for planning and implementing well-rounded accountability systems, they offer students, so we supposed to offer students opportunities and resources to achieve each state's goals, continue development and validation of multiple measures that strive for balance and clarity, apply use of standardized test scores with caution and only in combination with other data. avoid data aggregation that results in a single score or an assigned grade, develop expert school visitation teams, refocus external reviews of schools and districts on guidance and support rather than sections, and insist on the involvement of multiple stakeholders from families to administrators in a state level evaluation accountability. And we must remember the assessment asks for end of learning is a vision for enacting equitable education practices. And this can happen by balancing them. We will continue to value students, teachers, and administrators as important data sources and contributors to successful schools of the 21st century. And so for the activity, I want you guys to create a Jamboard. We haven't been using the Jamboard as much, so you can make a Jamboard for chapter 7. You can post it under the chapter 7 discussion thread. It can be about anything about your notes while you were reading it, or something that, or maybe 5 things you found interesting, or about the distinctions among testing, assessment, and evaluation found on page 195. Or you can, any of the opinions or reactions that you had as you read this. Okay, and so thank you for watching my video. And let me stop sharing. Okay, thank you, you guys. Bye-bye.